My research examines the development of modern Hebrew book typeface and how they were harnessed to express the national values of the Zionist movement established in the very beginning of the 19th century. In this lecture, I will present the formation of the modern Hebrew book typeface that represent the new Jew. For that, I will show two kinds of solutions. One through types that merge the typographic traditions of different Jewish communities, and the other through types who turn to modern and international innovations. The Hebrew letter forms divide into three main usable styles. The first one, book letter, also called square letter, characterized in stable proportion and used in print and typesetting. The second one, Rashi letter, used to clarify religious script and separated from the main text by written loosely and even in a smaller size. The third is cursive handwriting, which is influenced by the environment, the time, the writing speed, and the skill of the writer. The cursive and Rashi letters were formed organically over time more often and shaped through the power of time, location, and individual one. However, the book letter remained unchanged over the years. Only master-level scribes were able to create them, due to strict emulation created by the sanity of the script. The examine and review in this research puts a spotlight on the book letter only, for showing meticulous moves of type design and the research in creating it. Those allow an overview examine and withdraw viable factors. Considering the significant attention to readability, the book letter is designed over years, enabling a long recurrent process, inspecting the letter in large and small size as a word and a system of sentences. Until the print evolution by Gutenberg in 1440, the Hebrew book face was parted into two main styles, the Ashkenazic and the Sephardic, caused by different geographical locations of the Jewish communities all around Europe. The Ashkenazic book face evolved in Germany and northeastern France during the 13th and until the 15th century. In its earliest stages of characterization, the Gothic style was present in the majority of arts and architecture fields, and so in typography and type design. The Latin Gothic letters are characterized by wide stroke, with the base of the letter sitting on the edge of a thin point. The brush strokes creating the letter are designed as rhombusses or styled waves, giving the letter a broken and split, yet monumental appearance. Unlike the Latin type, the Hebrew letter was inspired by the same thick brush proportions, but the opposite way. Now, the horizontal lines, the bar and the baseline, were significantly thicker than the vertical ones. This thin and fragile stem styled in a wavy line, due to painting it downwards in the form of a wave. The tool Ashkenazic scribes used was a truncated quill head that also affected the visual appearance of the letter. It was placed perpendicular to the baseline in a straight and parallel way. The thickness of the quill head is reflected in the upper roof and at the base of the letter that extends through the entire thickness of the tool. The letter occasionally decorated with rhombusses or circles in order to restore the letter's balance, stability, and weight. Also, the stem painted while the quill held by its side or by its very pointed edge. The fragile stems created airy and light texture. It has unnecessary decoration, making it harder to read and came on the expense of legibility. Text arranged in the Ashkenazic script created a texture that mainly stand out with a continuous strip across the page and between it the light space of the parchment, which creates jitters and make it difficult to read. While the Ashkenazic form was developed, the Sephardic script style was already consolidated and significantly different from the Ashkenazic style. The Sephardic script was absorbed influences by the Renaissance movement and by the Arabic calligraphy, what transformed the letter into round, smooth, and flow. Unlike the quill used by the Ashkenazic scribes, the Sephardic letter painted by the reed pen over papyrus or paper. This reed pen didn't allow to create thin strokes due to its deep shape, and the ink absorbed and spread into the papyrus. Therefore, the contrast between the vertical and horizontal line became more even, what made the textured Sephardic style more readable, although it was black and tight. It was clean from decorative elements, and the letter form was consistent yet elegant thanks to its slightly wavy tendency. Those two styles were common until the 15th century and were identified with certain cultural groups. Until the 19th century, the development of modern Hebrew typeface was standstill. The Hebrew language is the only example from entire languages around the world to a large-scale language revival. It was used as a liturgical language of Judaism for hundreds of years and left without native speakers until the end of the 19th century. The main and major cause for the flourishing and the need for the revival of the Hebrew language lies in the awakening of modern nationalism. One of the reasons for the awakening of Jewish nationalism in the diaspora originates from the consolidation and strengthening of nationalism in Europe, against the background of the Balkan War, new political arrangement, and strong national fluctuation that shook the great empires. Part of the solution to the crisis of the Jews in the diaspora was the creation of the neo-Jew, who is now speaking the Hebrew language and freed from the dignity of exile. Eliezer ben Yehuda, known as the reviver of the Hebrew language, believed that the spoken language is the one that will unite the people, and the written language is the one that has divided them. Therefore, to prevent the schism, he dedicated his life to bringing the Hebrew language back to life. During this period, the Zionist movement began to increase its activity, and now the need arose to create modern types that would be an expression of the multicultural union of the people. The first to do so and to fulfill the new need was Raphael Frank with the help of Otto Riel, and in 1910 they created the first typeface of modern Hebrew, Frank Riel, which cast in the foundry of Berthold in Germany. 14 years later, Berthold Foundry published the Hebrew and Jewish Types Catalogue, the first one of its kind, focusing mainly on Frank Riel, which was new and refreshing news in the Hebrew Typography Theory. The catalogue declares at its preface that its purpose is to readdress a great deficiency existing in Hebrew printed letters. Frank himself designated the type for the use of the Zionist movement, when one of its goals was to revive the Hebrew language and make it an active and living language in all aspects of life, in its daily use as a simple spoken language, and in its literary, cultural, and Zionist publication use. And indeed, it happened, and the type quickly became highly common and was a neutral tool for the use of the graphic designer at the time. Dr. Idai Tamari, an expert with the Hebrew typography, wrote that there are several reasons for the type's undisputed success. The main one is being the creation of the letter at the same time as the rise of the Zionist movement. It created the need to a modern Hebrew typeface that will be an expression for the Zionist movement. That it will have secular characteristics and would be different looking from the familiar ones, without the biblical sense that it was until the design of the Frank Riel letter. In this typeface, unlike the Ashkenazic and Sephardic style, which had a distinct and recognizable style, Frank drew the letter in a harmonic way and created unity in the thickness of the stem and the root. In doing so, it contributes to optimal readability when setting mass of text, since the texture is uniform and not one that produces jittering as happened in the Ashkenazic scale. Also, in this type, the design mistakes made earlier in the Hebrew typography that were based on inspirations of the Latin typeface Didot and Gudoni, which also have high contrast, were corrected. Although it's stylized in the Art Nouveau spirit, and in particular the Jugendstil, which has curly lines and very black texture, its legibility is optimal, and it is the most common type in Hebrew language to this day. The typographic research on which Frank is based shows his mastery and extensive knowledge of the different types of script that were common before and at the time in different regions: Germany, Persia, Italy, the Netherlands, and Morocco. This broad knowledge allowed him to create Frank Reel as a mix that ideally combines two different typographic geographical areas that up to that point were distinctly separated in their style form. So, in the same way that the Hebrew language became a unifying and connecting factor for the representation of emerging nationalism, this type could be an expression for the multitude of different Jewish communities. It strengthened the sense of cultural nationalism that the Zionist movement aspired to create, without the characterization associated with a particular group as before. 2 decades later, at the time when Paul Renner's Futura typeface was launched, and while the Bauhaus School was at its peak, Henry Friedlander started working on the Hadassah typeface. Those days, Henry was working at the Hart-Drogoli Foundry in Leipzig when a request arose from Schocken Publishing House to create a new Hebrew typeface with modern character and adapted to a typesetting machine. The work on the type was prolonged following World War II. Friedlander moved from Germany to the Netherlands and from there to Israel, so the type was launched after 27 years of testing and creation in 1958. Unlike other Hebrew book letters designed up to this time, the Hadassah type was not a revival of an earlier state. Henry was influenced by the ideas of constructorism, and his main goal was the functionality of the type. Hadassah is an innovation based on both Ashkenazic and Sephardic script, and create a fusion of them. So, for example, on the left, you can see the letter Aleph, in which the top of the right arm is inclined to the right, similar to the Ashkenazic style. On the right side, the lower part of the letter Shin is pointed, similar to the Sephardic style. I like the design of the letter that preceded it, where the tool with which the letter was drawn can be identified. The Hadassah letter was designed as if it were made using paper cutting and even engraving, like the technique of woodcuts. Henry's experience at the printing house brought him to get to know closely the process of casting the letter and transferring it into the paper using the printing press, and those gave him a new spotlight on the creation of a new skeleton for the letter, which is not necessarily calligraphic. It abandons the quill and the nail appearance, and the thickness of the horizontal and vertical lines change, and the way the thick serif of the letter are designed, thereby breaking away from the Sephardic and Ashkenazic style of the 9th and 12th centuries. He consulted a lot with Stanley Morrison, the designer of Times New Roman typeface, who turned his attention to the idea of an entire typeface family, light, heavy, and italic. It was innovative for the Hebrew letters, and so it was another big step to Hadassah becoming into a modern letter. Therefore, Hadassah succeeded to take place in a renewed national Hebrew language. It was used for publication in posters of the Zionist movement, books, records cover, and more from then until today. Frank Reel and Hadassah knew how to blend each in their own way between the traditional Ashkenazic and Sephardic styles, but the two other types that I will present immediately created a new typographic simplicity in the Hebrew letter that was groundbreaking. In 1927, Jan Levit visited Tel Aviv and was exposed to a large flourishing and activity in the fields of culture and commerce. And so, as a result, he designed the Chaim typeface, influenced by the new typography movement and inspired by the radical geometry of the Bauhaus school. Chaim is monumental, dramatic type. It is the first monolinear and sans-serif type in Hebrew, as it takes typographic clean lines to the extreme and simplifies the letter to a basic skeleton. It was intended to be compatible with the Futura type that published at the same time, since the British Mandatory Authorities publication began to be published bilingual. It was necessary to create signage with the same typographical character. The grotesque nature of Chaim allowed designers in Israel to use it in newspaper headlines, propaganda ads, and to create sharp and direct political messages. On the left side of the newspaper, you can see the Hatzvi typeface. designed by Tzvi Hausman and Moshe Spitzer in 1956. Hatzri is based on the characterization of ancient letters before the division into the book scale, and based on manuscripts and stone inscriptions from the first millennium, emerging with modern elements of thick and uniform strokes. Hatzvi was the first typeface to have numeral design, and unlike the sans-serif letters that preceded it, like Chaim, it managed to distill the skeletal form of the letter and its simplicity, and without turning into a hard, stiff, geometric letter. Henry wrote that the Hatzvi is intelligently based on ancient forms, but those with a free and vigorous character, whose redesign created a completely modern typeface with a natural volume. It's designed in a monolinear style, and the traditional serif has been replaced by thick lines being pulled upwards. It maintains calligraphic marks that indicate it made by the hand of an artist and not by machine. Through those 12 typefaces, I was able to examine how the process of awakening and growth of the Zionist movement arose the need to create a visual voice for their messages. There is a strong integration between the revival of the Hebrew language and between the revival and thriving in designing a new, modern Hebrew letter. The Zionist movement aspires to establish a new Jew, who is not only concerned with the sacred and with the past. And so, the new types manage to represent the unified image of the Zionist Jew as a part of contemporary modern cultural and society. Thank you.